Good morning, everybody. Just to let you know that we're not sort of muted on purpose. We'll be starting the Construction Wales Innovation Centre Offsite Ready webinar in due course. Just waiting for a couple of extra attendees to log on. So we anticipate starting in probably 2-3 minutes, if that's okay. So we've currently got 14 online. So welcome to everybody. Bore da, croeso, so we'll start in due course. Thank you. Good morning. Welcome to those that are joining us on the Offsite Ready webinar. Just seeing attendees are now up to 18. We'll be starting in due course. Probably give us another couple of minutes. Wait for those to join, and we'll commence. I'm looking at the time. Probably commence just after past. So it's now 32. Plan to start 35. Thank you. Bore da, croeso. Good morning and welcome to the second instalment of the Construction Wales Innovation Centre's Offsite Ready webinar series. Offsite Ready is a collaborative project led by the Construction Scotland Innovation Centre in partnership with Edinburgh Napier University, Mobi, Class of Your Own and Quick. It's all made possible by CITB funding, so thank you CITB for funding this webinar series and the project. The project delivers a series of resources to support the education for construction education aimed at developing knowledge on offsite, modular and panelised construction methods. It's great to have so many of you online with us today. My name's Gareth Evans and I'm the Centre Manager for the Construction Wheels Innovation Centre, and I'll be your compere for the day. And more importantly, like to introduce two more important people, my two fellow presenters, David Ward from TRJ Limited and Eoin Plant-O'Toole from Edinburgh Napier University. David has a wealth of experience within the industry and now leads the design team at TRJ. Owen is a senior lecturer at Edinburgh Napier University and has co-authored some of our excellent offsite ready resources. On to the content of the webinar. Our presenters will be exploring one of the modules, and for us today, Owen will be exploring the module upon logistics. And we'll hear a little bit more from David and TRJ around their experience of working an offsite construction model, as well as discussing in an open forum, taking questions from those online and sharing that information with yourselves. But before we get into the detail, I'd like to explain a little bit more on how you can interact with us. So on the right-hand side of your screen, you have a chat facility. That chat facility will allow you to ask questions to us as panelists. Those will be monitored, the questions will be monitored and will be fed through to us. So should you have a question on the usability of the webinar, they'll be answered by our fellow presenters, Julie and Sheila, who will be working tirelessly in the background to make sure the webinar runs slickly. But any questions then that are aimed towards us as guests will be passed on and will be conveyed in due course. We will have two slots where we can ask questions. So what will happen is we will stockpile the questions to those and then fall back and relay those back to the presenters in readiness for those answers. Before we start with the presentations, and Owen is our first presenter, we'd like to ask a quick poll. And these polls contribute towards some data which will be fed back to CITB upon knowledge of offsite construction and specifically construction for offsite, for education for offsite construction. Now, the first question is, and I believe that's online as we speak. What is the most important consideration in regards to logistics? If you could answer the question as guests, answer the question for us using the Dropbox, those would be very valuable for us as information to share with CITB. As the poll results come in, once we see that all our attendees have so in the background, so we have some poll results online. Those will be collated and will be fed back to, as I said, will be fed back to CITB in due course. Thank you. Well, that's enough for me, and I'd now like to introduce Owen. Owen's experience as logistics adds great value to today's webinar. Owen, welcome you to the floor, and if you could explain to us a little bit more how companies now delivering an offsite construction model have to consider logistics, and also give us a little overview of the resources that are available on the webinar and on the Offsite Ready website would be absolutely brilliant. Thank you. Owen.
That's great. Thanks very much, Gareth. Appreciate the invitation here today and to speak and to promote the material that's been developed in relation to Offsite Ready and Offsite Ready logistics. So I'm Eoin Plant-O'Toole. I'm an associate professor in the business school at Edinburgh Napier University. So I've been involved in developing the logistics component along with some of my colleagues who are based in engineering and also in the built environment. So it's been a collaborative approach to, I suppose, pull together expertise from a number of different resources. So I'm just going to give you an overview, some of the key components of what's involved in the logistics, and I'm also going to refer you then to some information that's available on the Offsite Ready elements on their website, and the material that will be also uploaded as we continue to build the resources and material available there. So this has also been developed, the logistics component, in association with Canary Wharf contractors, who were excellent in allowing us to use a case study to try and contextualize some of the academic side a little bit more, so students and anyone else who wants to study the material can more easily relate to it. So just to give you an overview, one of the key elements that we talked about is in relation to digital skills, information management and communication. And we can often see that there is an overlap in some ways between logistics and project management. Because the planning, and as you mentioned in your poll there, 71%, the design element is so essential, and everything else tends to hang off the design and the planning element there. So the planning is really key in terms of, if you look at what logistics is, getting the right product to the right place at the right time, in the right quality, and also the price element and cost can also come into that as well. So this coordination and communication and the planning is really key. And a small break in the chain in terms of the logistics or a backlog somewhere, can definitely derail the project from being completed on time. So we do talk a little bit around digital skills and information management. And in terms of the Canary Wharf case study, it really pulls together, and you can see from that case study, which will shortly be uploaded to the website, what type of digital technology they actually use in their processes. So considerations for logistics at the design stage. So you've all, pretty much the majority anyway, have recognized design as one of the key elements. So the possible limiting factors of logistics operations, in particular around the design. So you're going to have to consider, the available transportation, and if there's going to be remote locations, the road network, for example, as well. They all need to be considered when you're actually designing the different aspects. So again, you're looking at, the restraints of the offsite system, the different modes of transportation, the regulations in particular. If you're going to be abnormal loads, that can be quite cumbersome on organizations to actually give the notice periods to some of the authorities, and the notice period can sometimes actually be weeks. So you can imagine the disruption that could potentially cause. So there can also be the vehicle routing from factory to site. Again, there's also technology that can help organizations associated with that. Again, around abnormal loads too, on some of the department's website. So that's also included in some of the learning materials that are going to be there. So time restrictions for city centres are crossing between different borders. So some city centres will have restrictions, or maybe you need to get permits if you're going to be building in an urban environment. In relation to vehicles over a certain tonnage. And again, you might also think about it in terms of construction logistics planning at the outset for some construction sites. In London, for example, they do have a requirement as part of the planning permission that you have a detailed construction logistics plan. How are you going to deal with the vehicles coming in and out? What's going to be the disruption potentially to the site, to local residents, to local businesses associated with that? So you have to demonstrate that you have a management plan in action to kind of mitigate any disruption in those different processes. And the site access and circulation. So again, looking at the different elements, if it's going to be something urban, you look at Canary Wharf again as an example, and they only had one site access, and that was the access and also the exit. So again, the scheduling, the planning, the information flow really had to be key to make sure everything is actually there at the same time. Otherwise, you're going to have potentially a blockage coming into the holding area, which tends to be a very small holding area, particularly in an urban construction setting. And what we also found in relation to the Canary Wharf, because it was such a big construction of 30 buildings, we had over 3,300 homes, 500,000 square feet, of restaurant facilities, almost 2 million square feet in terms of office blocks. So it was quite a lot of activity going on there in terms of the route planning, even on the construction site, and how you manage to get the inbound goods, particularly to where it needs to be, which could have been on the 45th floor of a particular building. So there was a lot of definite aspects around what equipment was available and what equipment actually needed to be used and in place to facilitate that. So again, also the training element has also been key in relation to this element of logistics too. So we also looked at other components, looking at the size and type, the delivery and direction of different components, aspects there. Really, we try to reinforce the aspect of having a holistic logistics strategy. What that really means is, you need to include a number of potential stakeholders in your design process. It could be in terms of the suppliers, it could be in terms of the construction site, it could be in terms of contractors. So they're all actually working together to have a more appropriate logistics plan, so there's not necessarily going to be any disruption in that progression of the building construction. So coordination and communication is key to successful construction and logistics management. And obviously logistics is part of the whole supply chain management philosophy of stakeholders working together, not necessarily working in adversarial relationships, but they're working in partnership to try and come up with the best product and come up with the best project as a result of that. So again, it links to the rights there, the right quantity, the right place, the right time, the right cost, and the right condition. And a lot of planning and information flow definitely needs to happen in the background before we're able to necessarily achieve that. So the component elements in relation to arriving in the correct sizes, as I mentioned, the holding area can be quite small, and as a result of that, you definitely need to have good scheduling. And we've also seen in the Canary Wharf case study that the technology that's actually needed there as well is important, because you need to track and trace what's coming in, at what time, and where it actually needs to go in relation to the construction site. So divide again any backlogs or bottlenecks in the system. So effective communication is key to ensuring that schedules are efficient and effective manner. We found in terms of using handheld devices, having web interfaces, having booking diaries, personnel who can maybe scan different materials coming into play. So that they're all been key elements in relation to that, and how it potentially also links to the bigger project planning, how our contractors going to have necessarily access to the information as well, so they can sign off on different activities have been completed, and then you move on to the next stage of that particular schedule as well. So in terms of the case study, so it's Canary Wharf, and we saw over 30 buildings in a mixed-use development, over 2,000 staff, and one of the buildings in particular at 58 floors. So that's quite a good case study, because it really kind of pulls all the material together to see, well, how does it actually work potentially in practice? And we have then some examples of some of the technology that they also used in terms of this information flow, in terms of this coordination element that was really key in terms of the Canary Wharf study as well. And there's also some elements here, what's involved in terms of construction logistics planning too, and at the outset, there's speculation whether maybe other councils and other planning authorities might look for more of this to be developed when it comes into a planning application process too. So that's just really a quick overview of some of the essential elements. Obviously, there's a lot more detail you can have a look at when the materials are going to be posted, and particularly onto the Offsite Ready website. So if I just flick over and just give you a little bit of a sample of what's actually available on the Offsite Ready. So Offsite Ready has quite a number of learning materials, and also some animations, some videos, and also some other support materials that are available there. For example, if I look at the teaching materials, we see there's a number of different components to that teaching materials. And if we go into the logistics element of that, We'll see there's some stuff that's uploaded and more needs to be done, but it will be done shortly. We have an animation there as well, which is a good way of briefly showing in a minute or two what the purpose of logistics and how does it actually fit with the rest of the operations and the rest of the construction site. In particular, its enabling and supporting role to the completion of construction projects. We also have some infographics elements that are available there too. And also we have a couple of different videos. So we will upload the case study, and just also to mention these slides will also be available shortly on the Offsite Ready. So that's just an example of the logistics element in relation to that. Obviously you can see there are other components there as well, and particularly procurement is also going to be there, which kind of fits quite well with the logistics element and the costing and commercial aspect. And there's also more information in terms of student support. So teaching support system, but there's a bit more around booklets and a bit more around career opportunities as well, and introducing the different elements associated with that, and looking at pathways to upskilling, for example. So that's kind of the core element for me, I think, to cover in terms of the logistics element, and just kind of giving you a sample of some of the material that is actually there. And please feel free to go to offsiteready.com and to engage with some of those materials and use those materials to support your own learning and support maybe student activities also. Okay, so I think that's it from me. I think we're going back then to Garrett at the next stage.
Thank you, Owen. Yeah, great. In terms of the resources, there's a large amount of resources available on the Offsite Ready website, and you gave us a really, sort of great insight into construction logistics there. Just a couple of questions really in terms of sort of logistics for construction at the moment. What you see the future of logistics is in Offsite. Do you see that there are further developments? Do you also see that there's a larger amount of contractors, especially clients, principal contractors and so on, engaging in training around logistics? So, I know that there are many schemes, clocks being one of them, construction logistics and community safety. These are, now very much gold standard when you engage in cities, especially Cardiff, Bristol, London. They're really in demand and a much needed sort of mechanism. But what do you see and what do you feel so the future of logistics is in Offsite?
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to be one of the key supporting functions of Offsite, particularly its linkage kind of more to the project management and the planning to ensure efficiency and effectiveness of the construction project. And I think the future, like many industries, many sectors, is digitization. And we're seeing a lot more on digitization of industry 4.0, there's supply chain 4.0 kind of coming back on the back of that as well. So these digital skills, I think, are going to be really key going forward. And where the future holds, with artificial intelligence and machine learning as well, we're looking at supply chain professionals and how much of that will be automated in terms of the scheduling processes and the improvement in self-learning that could actually happen in relation to that. So I think, yeah, digitization, but I think that's the case for many industries and many sectors going forward is going to be really key. And in terms of contractors engaging with learning, I think, yes, definitely, I think logistics has definitely become more at the forefront in the last number of years. And I think, in many, again, it's many industries and many sectors, and not just necessarily Offsite and construction. Even if you look at the current COVID-19 environment and how that's maybe impacted people's supply chains as well, and that it's become a lot more aware. And I think logistics, some of the professional bodies have worked quite hard to reinforce what logistics is and why logistics is important, because there was, I suppose, going back a number of years ago, that the product just arrives or the component just arrives, and maybe a lack of understanding of all the coordination that actually needs to happen behind that. But now I think there is, more realization of that and why it's necessarily important to enable and have those skills to enable an effective and efficient construction project. Yeah.
and I'm sure David, who's on with us as well, TRJ as a company, they have their own logistics sort of arm within the company. So I'm sure David will pick up somewhat a little bit later on around logistics planning and how they engage with that. I know you mentioned about the future, and I've seen recently that there are a number of principal contractors now using digital planning methods. We're talking here, digitizing virtual reality walkthroughs, virtual reality plans of logistics. So for them to be able to very much as an architect would do planning, for instance, sunlight into a building and so on. Now we find that there are principal contractors including that within including the logistics element then within their planning, and that being digitized, being made into a model, being displayed within the model, so that the teams along the way can see that sort of path that they want to travel. So it's really interesting to see sort of how digitization is not only sort of seeing that sort of the design of the structure of the actual physical construction, but the periphery, the more the delivery aspect of it. So great. Well, thank you, Owen. We'll pick up later on. Just a reminder to those online as well with us, if you have any questions, feel free to ask questions to us as panelists. It's available in the chat box. So again, don't be shy. Drop a question in, and we'll ask them to the relevant guest then online. So before I hand over to David, who's going to give us a little bit of information around TRJ and how they've adopted Offsite, I have another poll. We're going to have another 3 polls. This is the second, and the question that will be asked and the question that will be appearing on your screen in due course is: what's the biggest barrier to adopting offsite construction? Culture, financial, skills shortages, lack of government initiatives, other. So feel free to answer those online with us, and that are visiting as guests and attendees. Feel free to vote. Once the answers have been collated, they'll be displayed and allow us to then resubmit this information to inform us moving forward where we can best support construction education. We should have some music here in this downtime, but I'm sure we haven't got many left to answer the questions. Great. So it doesn't surprise me, to be fair, where there we have, what's the biggest barrier to adopting offsite construction? And in many cases, yes, it is culture. Our industry is very traditional in its culture and its outlook, and I think anything new and innovative is slow to be adopted. So brilliant, thank you for those answers. And now I'd like to hand over to David. So David, as I mentioned earlier, is from TRJ Limited, based in West Wales, a very traditional SME, and who have actually chosen to integrate an offsite model into their construction provision. So David, welcome to the floor, and look forward to hearing a little bit about yourself and about TRJ and how you've engaged with offsite construction.
Thanks, Gareth. Morning, everyone. It's great to be with you this morning, this webinar. Really just to give you a brief overview of who we are, what our experience of offsite has been in the past, what we're currently doing in terms of offsite, and where we see our future going with offsite manufacturing also. So basically, in terms of who we are, established 1935, still family owned and director run. We employ circa 200 people locally, so we're a major employer in the area. Very process driven. We've got ISO 9001, 14001, and multidisciplined. As Gareth mentioned earlier, not only do we undertake construction, civil engineering, demolition, etc. We've also got our own waste management facility, haulage and plant hire, joinery workshop. C certified steel fabrication, and more recently, which links us back into our offsite capabilities, our own timber frame facility. Linked again to that, we've got our in-house design and technical team, and we've got a great commitment to training and upskilling and apprenticeships. I think we've currently got circa 15 staff going through apprenticeships at the moment, and we see great value to that. Experience, we've worked in both private and public sector, across education, commercial, industrial, healthcare, residential schemes. A great track record in all of these projects, really, in design development through design and build, and value engineering where necessary. Proven in-house experience of delivering BREEAM, Passive House, government soft landings, and BIM level 2. Probably our first foray into offsite manufacture was back in 2016. We became Kingspan Tech delivery partner, so that's Kingspan's structural insulated panels, and we've now our in-house design team now is trained up with the use of Timber Tech structural timber design and HSBC CAD panel design systems. We're also Autodesk Revit professionals and certified passive house consultants. So we've upskilled our team to be able to move forward with our offsite plans. So to give you a flavour of our past experience of offsite, linked back to our Kingspan delivery partner, we delivered a school in Llanelli called Penrose, multi-award winning school, 420 pupils with a 60 nursery placement, BREEAM excellent. And on this project, we used the Kingspan Tech system for the whole of the Flying Start building, which is the bottom right picture on that slide. So that was walls and roof cassettes, all manufactured off-site. And what we found with that was the speed of erection, with it being our first real off-site project, where we were very impressed with it. And the main school with that then was also done with tech panels, and obviously with the size of that, which you can see there, those were all craned into place with specialist equipment. Next project, and I give apologies in advance for this one because it's a very tenuous link to offsite construction, but we do like to show this one off because it's quite a nice project for us to have been involved with. In terms of offsite, it was a gatehouse, which was the entrance to the site, which we did again in Kingspan Tech. But it's just a nice example to show of the type of work that we can do, and we're quite proud of that one. And then probably we did this, completed this recently. There's 6 houses in Ammanford, not far from our HQ. We did this in partnership with a company called T Solar from down west. Completely off-site panelized construction, closed panel, pre-insulated walls, floor cassettes and roofs. They were actually manufactured by T Solar, and we partnered with them and did all the groundworks and the full erection package, cladding, roofs, M&E, etc. So that was the first, what I suppose you'd call our first full off-site project. Present projects, one which close to Gareth, both in proximity and everything else, is the Swansea Bay COVID Field Hospital. We were asked to get involved with this, obviously when COVID became real in Britain. 1,000-bed field hospital, and it's actually built within the existing building, which was formerly the Ford Axle assembly plant in Swansea. So you can imagine a building that's been empty for many years. Dare I say, probably not fully cleaned from when it was an axle plant. So we needed to build a 1,000-bed field hospital within these confines. So immediately we thought, okay, we'll use our offsite assembly, and effectively we've built a building within the building to house this facility. We completed circa 2,000 panels. Those were all built in 89 stud, and we took a modular approach. So we developed the first area in multiples of panels, and we continued that through the 5 phases then, so that we could maximize production output in the factory with a modular system, great speed of delivery, and we minimized waste. And then on top of that, on top of our panels, then we did a 300mm deep engineered I-joist roof / ceiling. A couple of pictures, I think, or slides moving on. So that's typically an example of our panel production drawings that we did. So you can see the mod, see how it was done in a modular fashion with multiple panels of the same type. That's typical of a panel drawing that we produce in-house for it. And then there's a couple of pictures here then of the works as they were ongoing. So you can see that's sort of the scale of a single panel, and the smaller panels there. You can see the erection ongoing in the existing building there. And as we've moved on with the I-joists to form the ceiling there. And then that's obviously a bit more of the finished article. Walls and ceilings are painted and all lined with white rock. In terms of timescales, we took this job on. We had a meeting on a Tuesday night, and I think within a fortnight we were delivering our first panels to site for them to go up. And then within, I think it was about 6 weeks, we were handing over the first phase of the hospital to Swansea Bay University Health Board. So it was quite a challenge. There was a lot of long hours worked, both from a management and design perspective and from a production perspective. The panels that our guys in the factory were producing were flying out the door. I mean, they really were just to meet the needs of the guys on site. And you can see the bottom picture there was basically handover, and that's the finished article. Another one that we're currently on site with this. So it was a scheme that we tendered with Commandos County Council, 32 units in Buryport. These are all manufactured in our factory. Wall panels, floor cassettes. We do these walls in 300mm engineered I-joists, largely due to U values required, because they are highly energy efficient houses, and then clad in externally. Again, typical panel drawing, and going back to something that Owen mentioned earlier, was we've tried with this project, given the experience of needing the cranes, etc. when we did the school, we tried our best with this one to engineer the panel size and weight to suit our existing plant and haulage capabilities. So you can see there we've worked out our existing telehandlers, what on maximum reach and height to erect these houses they could carry. So you can see on the bottom screen 800 kgs maximum reach, maximum height. And I think our panels were around 600 kgs to give us a little bit of safety on it. We were going to look at further developing the offsite process, and I'll touch on that later. Again, first floor cassettes that we produced for that project. And then Offsite Future for us, really. We're currently working on a passive house certified school in Pembrey, which hopefully is going to be on site first thing 2021. We've got 3 more housing developments which we've committed to produce in our frames. And going back to what I mentioned earlier about the Glanmore Terrace job, we are looking at further developing how much we do offsite. So fitment of windows and doors in the factory, external cladding, and potentially M&E installations. So we've got click and connect when they come to site. And again, that brings back all the questions over logistics, existing plant. Do we commit to additional plant that can take the much increased weights and sizes of panels, or do you subcontract it and you know, use trusted supply chain partners for craneage, etc. And those are all things that we're going to be considering in the future to move our offsite processes further along. And that's it for my slides. Thank you, Gareth.
Thank you very much, David. It's really sort of great to hear how companies are sort of embracing, companies such as TRJ are sort of embracing the offsite construction model, you know, and sort of further developing and strengthening their position in industry. You know, it was really interesting to me, especially there, you know, how you've embraced sort of as a company, thought about the whole life cycle, you know, with yourselves as a developing the offer of, you know, what can we facilitate ourselves? You naturally had that internal supply chain, and you know, you picked on it earlier, you know, just a moment ago, and rather than maybe possibly reaching out to trusted supply chain, you know, developing the internal provision, you know, in view of keeping a tight, close eye on quality standards, and you know, sort of the availability then of that resource. So yeah, really interesting there. You know, one question I've got for you really is, so how have the staff at TRJ embraced change into an offsite model? You know, and going back, so I worked for TRJ previous life. You know, I'm a carpenter by trade, and before progressing into industry, a very traditional company, you know, and you know, to see the development of TRJ is really exciting. So how have the staff embraced the changes to the offsite model?
Certainly in terms of operative staff, going back to what you said about carpentry and joiners, etc. I think what we find is that you've still got the requirement for both our on-site skilled carpentry workforce as well as our factory staff. And in fact, when we were very committed to the Bay Hospital job, and we needed further panels, or we needed panels quicker, what we did then was we brought some of our experienced carpentry guys in from site, and we were running 2 lines within the factory. And then as the need for the panels dropped off, those guys were going back out and actually down to Bay Studios on site. So you'd find that some of them were fitting the panels that the week before or 3 days before they'd been making in the factory. And you know, certainly from a management perspective and contracts managers, site managers, they can definitely see the benefits now with these jobs on site, certainly in terms of speed. And for us, going forward over the next few months, what will become apparent to us is the costs. And obviously it's not just an assessment of costs in terms of material and labour costs. It's in terms of how much time we've saved on site by bringing all the off-site manufacture on.
You know, and you know, there you pick up costs, David. You know, but also in terms of well-being, you know, staff well-being and so on. You just mentioned around COVID. You know, for instance, you were you know, the availability there to continue work. Yes. You know, as a company, you know, you were probably busier during the COVID-19 period than you were, you know, prior to it, essentially.
And I can definitely say I certainly was, guys.
so you know, it's embracing to see, and from a perspective there, you know, you've got you know, the ability to be able to diversify, deliver a different model, but you know, also that, you know, that sort of well-being aspect there is a strong one, where, you know, I think this is where the perception of the industry has changed as well, so where you have a very traditional offer, so you may have, like you said, carpenters that are very used to to working on site and essentially having deliveries of raw material and fixing, creating, cutting, everything on site.
Yeah.
Working in a controlled environment, being able to have that quality aspect maintained, quality assurance, the management structures there, so that you can keep a very close eye on what goes out the door, rather than have to pick up the mistake, pick up and remedy mistakes afterwards. So and it's nice to see that the staff there are undertaking the two sides of the coin. So not only are they constructing in a factory environment, they're actually fitting. So this, they're still seeing that sort of whole life cycle through, which is again very traditional for those skills. Owen, rather than I don't know whether you have any questions for David at this time. We're having a little bit of IT issue there, possibly. I have one more maybe for David before we sort of move on. Sorry, Owen, I don't know. I can't hear you.
I just couldn't get my mouse off the mic button. I thought it was great presentation, David. It was really interesting. And I was kind of wondering, you've obviously been very successful at developing Offsite. And I just wondered, what do you think were, the key enablers and facilitators for that? Did you find something in particular that kind of enabled? I know you talked about staff in particular, because change is always difficult for some people.
I think more than anything, the driver for us was that you've got to move on. You've got to embrace change, and we could see from our early involvement with taking off-site materials from a manufacturer and assembling them ourselves on site. You can see the direction that the industry is going with off-site, and we felt we had to embrace it. And therefore we made a significant investment with the timber frame factory and our staff guys up there. And there's no doubt about it that this is the future, and we've got to keep pushing forward with it.
Great. Yeah.
My fault on the mic there. We have a couple of questions come in. I'll just hold them a minute for a few more to come in. But one of the other ones, David, sort of, I think that I have more than anything in off-site construction seems to be very, very timber orientated.
Yes.
And as a company, for a number of years, TRJ have specialised in steel fabrication. Are you exploring? Are you actually exploring that? Do you deliver some hybrid systems? You mentioned around the click and connect systems that you're working on, possibly a new. But are you exploring other avenues as well, not only the timber model, but also possibly the steel and sort of metal aspects of construction?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we've sort of got. It's not high. I mean, at the moment we've got a couple of jobs on site where again we've used our panels. We've prefabricated our panels to slot within our own prefabricated and erected steel frames. So obviously they're not physically joined together off site, but we are undertaking that process where we are integrating our systems during the build process. There's definitely an option in looking at being able to deliver possibly wall panel elements, steel framed and panelled. But again, it comes back to assessing both availability of transport for what will be much bigger units, and again the lifting requirements and fixing on site. So it's the option's definitely there, but it's something that we need to really think about in the future.
Great, no, thank you. It's really sort of interesting to see, because that hybrid, we've seen a few companies in Wales develop a hybrid offer. The sort of the timber frame offer as we know it, then in sort of in our Welsh industry is a fixed place.
Yes.
But to see these hybrid offers and or even go a further direction and take into steel construction or more metallic construction, then is I suppose one of the next steps.
Yeah.
I'm going to touch in that we have two questions. I suppose one's one aimed at both really. So David, while we're with you, I'll stay on yourself a minute, but I think this sort of delivers to us the consideration that you've put in as a company. But the question is, in many traditional design processes, I wonder how many architects factor in limitations of telehandlers and plant during the construction process. So maybe it's more of an observation, and it's more of a positive observation from your side, because you are factoring this in with the internal design team, forcing the aspect.
Yes.
But I think do you find that other design houses and other design teams factor this in, or is it just the experience of TRG in delivering such an aspect that's sort of put you forward in that way of thinking?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like you said, we think about it because we've got the holistic approach. We're quite rare from a main contractor perspective, where we've got such a vast array of in-house capabilities, including the design team. Speaking from experience, which as you know, I spent 19 years in private architectural practice. So in answer to the question you just asked, I would say in my experience, not a lot of consideration would be given to the thought of how a modular system or how a building system and its elements get delivered and constructed on site within an architectural practice, and that brings back the need for early contractor involvement with schemes and the design and build process. And that's why the majority of our schemes, where we're doing a lot in-house, or we're not, we do still work with external consultants and architects. And when we do that, we like to take the opportunity to have that early involvement to lead the design in terms of those aspects for ease of installation on site.
Yeah, it's I think a lot of larger contractors, a lot of the bigger projects have very detailed logistic plans, especially when they have fixed craneage and so on in place. Yes. But it's in many cases forgotten on the smaller projects, and that's possibly where it's in terms of the importance, where it can be more important, where we're working on smaller parcels of land, surrounded by high residential sites and various challenges. So yeah, it's a really interesting sort of factor really. Owen, one for you that's come from the audience as well. Logistics are an important offsite for offsite success, but should we also close the loop with reverse logistics? How can we sort of design buildings to minimize waste and maximize the reuse of components and so on?
Yeah, I think that's really an excellent question, and the move towards the circular economy and potential then to reuse different elements in there as well. And in terms of the design aspects, it's not too much my area in terms of designing the different components or panels and the different aspects there. But I'm sure maybe if there's a standardized approach, there might be ability to I suppose to uncommission it and to potentially use it in another format. For example, I don't know if David has maybe some examples potentially for that. Can I maybe to pass it over to David?
Yeah, I mean, again, in terms of minimising waste, going back to the Bay Hospital one, we looked at the panel sizes in that so that they were basically modularised around a sheet of OSB, so that we weren't cutting, we weren't having offcuts of OSB that would potentially end up in a skip somewhere. So that was definitely considered right from the offset with us on that project. And again, I suppose that's one of the advantages of timber, is in terms of the reuse on the life cycle perspective. You know, it's got a good potential for recycling, isn't it?
No, great, thank you. I can't see at this moment in time we have any further questions, and we are nearing the end. We're coming up to 25 past 11, so we're coming up to the end of the webinar now. So we have one poll left. This poll will appear on your screens in a few moments, and the current poll is: offsite manufacturing offers a number of environmental benefits, but what do you think is the most significant? We just picked up there, you know, less waste, less material storage, less cost, lower energy demands. So as an audience, which of those do you think offers what that offsite manufacturing offers to us as an industry? If you voted, thank you very much. And if you, I think we have one more poll to come in. One more vote. Thank you. So yeah, offsite manufacturing offers a number of environmental benefits, but the audience today basically outlined that yeah, its most significant aspect is less waste. You know, interestingly there, you know, sort of when we're talking logistics, nobody voted less material storage. And you know, when you think of logistics and think of storage considerations and so on, like that movement of materials to site, and that again, with a small parcel, small sites, especially city sites and so on, material storage is a huge consideration. That's why a lot of people actually think of a more off-site panelized, you know, off-site manufactured approach. We do have another one poll just to close. So we've sort of thrown two in one slot there, and the last poll will be working its way to you now. And the last poll to close is: what do you think the biggest benefit for skilled works to move on into offsite manufacturing? So for us, does it create a single place of work for industry? Does it improve the health and safety of their working environment? Protection from the elements of quality control? So from the audience, which of those do you think is the biggest benefit for skilled works to move into offsite manufacturing? Just bringing it to a close, we see some, so the audience today have thought the biggest benefit for skilled works to move into offsite manufacturing is quality control. And you know, I think that's an important, really strong, important consideration that we have to, you know, take place in you know, for the industry to deliver a better product. Sort of, you know, our industry in many cases have come under sort of considerable highlight when it comes to quality. So this is, I do strongly believe, one of the biggest benefits for offsite manufacturing, that we can have that quality control on the systems, then ensure that the systems are followed effectively. So it's now unfortunately time to bring the second Offsite Ready webinar to a close. Thank you for those that are online with us today, and especially Owen and David for their sort of considerable insight in logistics and on-site placement, and hearing some examples, some excellent examples of how offsite manufacturing has come to the forefront, especially now during this sort of COVID-19 period, and how a contractor, an SME in West Wales, has sort of, you know, joined the fight to support that development of 1,000 beds field hospital. You know, I have to say, you know, we do have considerable interest in that, because as an innovation centre, we have a training centre that's neighbouring onto that site, and it was really impressive recently to see how you know, offsite manufacturing had converted that training centre into a staff facility, and the turnaround on time was, you know, really one of the most impressive aspects. So Finally, audience, thank you very much for your participation. Thank you for your questions. We'll be back tomorrow with our third instalment, and tomorrow we'll be exploring digital design, estimating and commercial, and how these play a crucial part in the offsite construction process. Tomorrow we have again two guests. We have Mark Carter and Andy King from Wernick, again a contractor from just outside of Swansea and Port Talbot. And we also have Lindsay Richards. Lindsay is a senior lecturer in the University of Wales, Trinity St David, with expertise in offsite construction, and particularly when it comes to estimating and commercial. So again, thank you, Owen and David, for your time today. Thank you, audience, for your time in dialing in. We look forward to seeing you. But in the meantime, feel free to explore any of the Offsite Ready resources at offsiteready.co.uk. The last thanks and my closing thanks goes to CITB for funding this programme and outlining the importance of offsite construction to education across the UK. Diolch yn fawr, thank you very much, and look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Diolch.
Thanks everyone. Thank you.